Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yena mamupayanti te. Satatayuktana. To them ever steadfast, worshipping me with love, I give the Buddhiyog, by which they come to me. Think about God for 2 minutes. This is the homework, suppose it's given. If I am not a well-read person, I will not know how to think about God. Our imagination doesn't run that far. To whatever extent my imagination goes is not God. Very difficult now. That is depicted by that little episode given in the Bhagavatam, in the beginning itself, when King Parikshita tells Kali to run away from his kingdom because he was unrighteous, he was torturous to innocent animals, innocent beings. So King Parikshit says, this won't do in my kingdom, so you run away or I'll kill you. So Kali started running away out of fear of death. As far as he could go, it was nothing but King Parikshit's kingdom. So Kali comes back, panting. And he says, I don't know, where's the end of your kingdom? It's beyond far limits, so I can't go out of it. Please give me little space in your kingdom itself. And then he was given these 4 or 5 places where Kali said, okay, I'll restrict myself to these 5 places. And these 5 places are playing sufficient havoc in the world. That is the impact, the negative impact of negativities in each individual. If collectively we call it, then we call it as Kali Yuga. That's all. That's how we call for self-destruction. And here Bhagavan says, to whatever extent your intellect goes, to that extent you will have to think about the righteous consciousness alone, the divine alone. How will I do that, O Lord? So the Lord says, to those who are constantly focused, ever steadfast, worshipping me, to them I bless them with Buddhiyog. So it is not that I will be able to put my intellect in that way, but it is that the grace of God will make my intellect so profound that to whatever extent it goes, it will think of nothing other than consciousness. It will be constantly aware of the pure consciousness within itself. Who is illumining my intellect? How does the intellect get illumined? Is by the presence of consciousness. So I have to be constantly aware of that fact, right? But what happens? To whatever extent my intellect goes, it is nothing but worldliness at present. That is the impact of Kali. King Parikshit said, get out of my kingdom. That would have been better. He couldn't go out. So he is very much here. Now the impact of worldliness is constantly hampering my continuous flow of awareness towards consciousness. What is the way out? So this intellect is lacking sufficient data about the divine. What have I known about Lord Shiva? What have I known about the Vedanta principles of Vedanta philosophy. How much have I known about the festival which we celebrate as Sri Krishna Janmashtami? What do I know about the systematic way of worshipping the gods and goddesses every day? Why should one keep fast? Why do we observe certain auspicious days? Known, not known. So where is the data? It is available. I have not put into my intellect, because I have fed my mind-intellect equipment with worldly objective informations. And I have put it into use also accordingly. I have known about the history and the geography and the economics and the science and the, what is that? Information technology or whatever it can be in the world. But I have not known sufficiently about this body and the intellect and the mind and the senses and their functions and the world around me at a subtler level. So lack of information makes me disinterested towards the very subject. So you were taken to the race course by your friend. And you know nothing about the horse races. What is that? You don't know anything about it. So he is informing you about this and that. And by looking at the horses, he knows that this one is going to win or whatever it can be. These are experts. And then a jockey, about jockey also you don't know. And he's explaining everything meticulously. And then the race begins. And then you have your own imagination. One thing you know, that it's not good. To go to the race course often is not good. That's all you know. But then thousands are going there, right? So there is a knack of riding the horse and making him win, and it's an art. There is a science behind it. Then there is a history behind it, and everything is there behind it. And then that jockey comes very sad to your friend and says, "Today my horse got hurt." So you are quite oblivious about even if the horse gets hurt. So what? Like, okay, you will take him to the hospital. But this jockey knows that now no more can he run any race. So he is extremely saddened by this. All this information you gathered and went back home. So for a few days, this whole scene of that race course and the horse are running and somebody's winning, somebody's sad, somebody's joyous, somebody has lost a big amount of money and somebody has got the jackpot or whatever. At least for 3-4 days, you have some information to revel in the thought of race. What is that? What is that called? Race. Horse race. Just a day before that, you had no idea of it. So can you think about a race course without any information? You haven't been there, you have not experienced. At least even a little bit of its experience can make you revel in the thought at least for 3-4 days. And then after so many months, you met your friend again and you started talking about it, because once in a while now you started looking at the newspaper where they are giving the news of these races and all that. And then now you have some feeling for the horse when you saw another horse getting hurt or whatever. So this is how my mind can slowly start imagining about any such subject of which I had no idea whatsoever. But when it comes to this, why do we want to run away from it? Don't you think that we need this information as well? In fact, this was very important because this is the life-giving substratum about which I am absolutely unaware. I know nothing about it. And then suddenly some crisis comes and I want to think about God, but I am unable to do it. And even when the holy chants are being chanted under the circumstances, I am absolutely ignorant about what's happening, is not a very good sign for a human being, because the human intellect can grasp, can understand, can expand its imagination to any extent for that matter. So, slowly one should get on to getting some kind of interest in reading the scriptures and in listening to the discourses, which are talking purely about the scriptures alone. Our philosophy is very rich. Why? Because the rishis had this thought that the philosophy of life helps the human beings to evolve. It is not to console a saddened person. It is not to pull out a person who is in grief. It is not to calm down the angry man. It is for evolution of human life, evolution of soul. So therefore, this is very important to read the scriptures so that constantly and regularly, if I read the scriptures, then definitely slowly my mind will have sufficient data to reflect upon it. Before rejecting it, I must give it a try. When the man decides thus, then the providence works. Because the divinity is not away from me, therefore I will get blessed by the same divinity. Dadami buddhiyogam tam yena mam upayanti. And my own divine thoughts will push me towards higher self. The husband and wife started fighting for some petty matter at home. And after half an hour, some 50 guests were coming for dinner. So the first bell rang after half an hour of their fight. They are still in the fighting mood, okay? And the bell rang. So immediately these two decided, we will fight later now, drop it now for the time being. Otherwise, we'll not be able to welcome the guests properly. A wise couple will at least delay the fight, postpone the fight for a while. So somehow they pulled them out of that mood, and with a good smile they opened the door and started welcoming the guests one after another. Though it was not a perfect mood for this woman. The man managed, somehow he forgot, because the moment you talk about money, he forgets everything in the world. So some kind of talks started amongst men, so he forgot. This woman was still into it, but somehow was pulling on. And then one after another at late night, all the guests went away. Now, at the back of their minds, this fight is still there. So some good or bad things happen towards at the time of that gathering. So what will be at the surface of that mind stuff of each individual will be the negativity, because the whole incident started with a negative note. So little mistakes that had happened during those 3-4 hours were prominently creating agitation in both the minds. So even after everybody left, the original reason for the fight was sidetracked, and these petty matters became big for the fight. And they again started. So, how easily and conveniently we get stuck into our lower thoughts. Now, the same couple, if by God's grace, start reading or listening to the scriptures under a proper guidance. So, of course, the fight will be there because that's how the human mind runs, but it doesn't matter. But it so happened that after a few years, say 3-4 years, another incident happened and both started fighting, but by then they had already started reading the scriptures. So they had some kind of idea that one can elevate oneself by not entertaining the negative thoughts and work out the things better. So instead of half an hour of steady fight, they hardly fought for 5 minutes and suddenly realized that not required. So both separated and started reading a few good lines from here and there. And of course, within half an hour, the guests started coming in. And by the time that gathering went back home, the fight was over. And the little petty matters were not a matter of fight for them anymore. So this much of elevation was also possible only because of elevation of individual's mind. The situations did not change and they will never change. It is the quality of thoughts which matter to an individual's life. It is my life. Why don't I want to improve the quality of my life? By changing the quality of my thoughts? Why should I waste so many hours of my precious life in entertaining negative thoughts of my own self? Can't I entertain myself with the positive and diviner thoughts? But where will I get them from? And that is why Buddhiyog was important. So initially, I intentionally started reading the scriptures. From then on, the yoga of Buddhi had begun for me. But that is not actually the Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi Yoga will come only by the grace of Lord when intuitive knowledge will start flowing. It doesn't matter. At least I am on the path. So, therefore, Sat Sangha. This is called as truly Sat Sangha. This is to get associated with Sat. Sat is that divine in me. Sat is that higher thought in me. Sat is that substratum in me. So this is how Bhagavan says, Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. Should come out of love, out of my sincere love towards the divine. Why should I love the divine? Because the divine is peaceful, it is cheerful, it is helpful, it is compassionate, it is kind, all the virtues, it is honest, it is sincere. So therefore I love the divine. That should be sufficient. And then what happens when one gets steady in Buddhi Yoga? When the intellect gets steady in the thought of the divine, then what happens? Bhagavan further blesses him